Welcome back, everybody. Episode 40 of the Leonis report, cruising along through the beginning of the year. JB and I back again. How's the week starting off, man?
It's going good. Had a little get together at my son's school tonight. He's a first grader, so he had a little school concert. We had sung a couple songs, so it was very cute, very fun to get the family out and check that out. So having a good night, and definitely excited for the podcast tonight because we have a ton of really awesome stuff to talk about. So how about you? How was the weekend?
It's good. Honestly, nothing too crazy. We're in hibernation mode, if you know what I mean. So just sleeping, just some gaming, some chores, and rinse and repeat, and get back to the grind of work and whatnot, waiting for the spring to hit. But yeah, tonight's definitely very exciting. Let me just recap quickly the kind of topics for those listening here. We have the Near Automata collab release, which we knew it was coming imminently, but it is here officially. We're going to go through the upgrades for 9S and 2B. We're going to talk about the vision cards, not only the old one, but the new A2 one. We're going to talk about A2 as the unit. The Veritas, the Wind, he's being announced, much delayed, but finally here as well. We have another vision card. It's the Chef Aldoa vision card coming in. There's a bunch of reliquary quest items getting +1 upgrades in addition to near things that we'll kind of give some quick analysis on, limit break upgrades, and then we have some good Q&A stuff, but not before we start talking about Helena the Black Rose, and again gauging some of her impact and some of the thoughts and how near intersects with that, but also about the new 70 cost unit, the Ashen ShadowLynx. We have a new warrior finally announced, and just getting some quick hit thoughts. And so on that note, we'll start off here with Near Automata. We'll talk about the unit upgrades for 9S and 2B. And we'll start with 9S. I know he's one that you've been very excited for. You drafted him in the WDL. I know there's probably some copium, but I think it's justified. So let's talk through his upgrades here, and I'll let you kind of take the reins on it if you'd like. We can go through the 140 and just whatever you're seeing.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I think, at least in terms of the WDL, his cost was just so deprecated that he was just one that I immediately went for as a value. I think in terms of like the grand scheme of the game, like for day-to-day PvP, I don't think he's really going to be knocking down any doors. Although I think they did actually give him some good things here in terms of the upgrades. First and foremost, they gave him 20 defense penetration. He didn't have any innately before, so that's a huge value add for him. They did give him a reduction in the physical damage taken, just a flat 10%. That's actually pretty nice for him. That's kind of leans into that's always been his wheelhouse, is kind of being that physical bruiser. The dream ability, I think they gave him a couple of primo items with the agility and area resist. So those are a couple of things that we're always wanting to see there. The agility in particular, I think that it allows you to get him to a good speed, even without taking his passive, which his passive, it does give him that additional movement, which you may or may not want to use in every build. So
You're right.
I do like that flexibility. Aside from that, the he also is getting that limit burst upgrade, which is, probably, or I'm sorry, before we get to the limit burst, he is getting a skill upgrade actually
Yeah.
with the dream upgrade.
It's
This one is actually kind of minor. Like it's okay. It's not translated here on wotv calc, but what it does is he, similar to Garnet, or she protects her shell, he's able to protect his protect. He can remove the abilities, or he can remove the enemy's ability to remove it. So, and that's an on-hit effect that he gives that to his allies as well. So whenever somebody hits with that, they're debuffed and can't remove protect. So it's pretty nice for him, I think.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's the
That is very
first.
nice.
I think that's the first one we've seen. We've just seen Dagger that has the shell version of that. So
Yep. Yep. Well,
um,
it's just one of those things you consider combining that with the 10% reduced physical damage that it already gets from the MA2. You're talking just flat 35% physical damage reduction for everything. I think that's super versatile because predominantly out of the 5 damage types, 4 of them tend to skew physical. So in terms of just like a numbers game, in terms of encountering missile or pierce, and sometimes you have to like gear nichely for those, you just don't here because this affects all of them equally, which is not the case for some of the other resistances. This is very nice though. I do like that.
and I do like one particular thing about 9S. He is one of those units that has very high pierce resistance. He always had that. He has 20% innately. He does have the Nightblade sub job, so he can bring in that 25% buff for pierce damage as well. And as we think about Wind Veritas coming in, as we think about Eld and some of these primo, spear units, maybe that's, a small niche for him. even in the big boy leagues for PvP. So not bad at all. Even on like the near black cube item that is going to be coming in with the event, that has a passive form that gives him another 10% physical reduction. She can stack onto that, so
Yeah.
starts to add up. It's kind of not too shabby.
Yeah, not at
LB
all.
upgrade here, the LB upgrade here also pretty nice. This was where he was getting his defense penetration before for that 40%, 40 for 3 turns. We're adding on a unit resistance debuff here of 30. It's increasing the range by an additional 1. It's giving them that barrier and an AP restore. So pretty nice overall upgrade there.
Absolutely. Very sizable AP cost reduction, too. I love this limit break. It adds a second imperil in his kit, where this one's the 30 unit res. He's already got a 25% pierce imperil, so you can obviously stack those in terms of comboing one after the other. I think this is a great upgrade for him, again, leaning into that physical, not, I won't call it niche, but physical build, if you will. That, mid-fight barrier, this we've seen time and time again, very, very advantageous to be able to, out of thin air, just kind of like create one after maybe enemies have already expended a couple barrier breaks, or maybe their AP starts getting low. I would imagine that this ability does get used relatively early, just because it is the increased defense pen. That just AI wise, I feel like this gets prioritized. But yeah, this is a great thing they did for him. I like this upgrade. I do think it's elevated him. That when you look at lightning units in particular, a lot of the lower cost ones here have not held water as well. And he certainly stands a head and shoulders above many of them from that cost perspective.
I do always like it when a unit can really carve out and be excellent in one niche, because I feel like that does extend their life, and it give if we see a really heavy physical team coming into the meta, he's a unit maybe you can potentially look at it, especially if it's like a water favored team, like a water ice combination in particular. So yeah, I'm always a fan of that.
Definitely. And one last point, because we talk about Pierce all the time. That is one thing that I look for here as well when I like gauge a character. That if I'm looking at an element, I want to see like one top tier unit of each attack type when I look at that element. So obviously for like strike, you have Alaya. For slash, you have Squall or Astrius. For magic, you could go Winter Wrath, you could go Helena. You could, make the case for Ibarra, I guess. Like there's some decent magic units, but the Renaud fans are crying. When you look at Pierce, though, there really just isn't a Lightning Pierce unit. It just doesn't exist. Veln is not that character. So I just look at it from that perspective, that I think this is like disproportionately good, because they're giving him value in an element that doesn't have an existing, character take that slot. So I like that a lot.
And he's a free unit, so if you weren't around when the first time this came, you'll be able to get him now and pick him up for free. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he's going to struggle right now in the short term, just given the magic stuff. He's not a strong magic unit
no.
by any stretch of the imagination. He's got literally like nothing to defend against in that regard. But yes, I think for more niche applications, he's still got some legs. The jump too still underrated. There's been a lot of units recently that have strayed away. There was a time where we were getting one after another where they had that jump versatility. I've come to miss this. There's been a couple maps recently where you have that height separation. Zidane came in, kind of reminded me of like what a unit with height 2 can do. It's like, oh, it's kind of nice. So I like this wrinkle in it also.
Yeah, that's one thing he has is good mobility, because he's got the move and his passive, so he can get up to 4-2 if you want it. I do also really like. I've always liked his party buff for the 40 accuracy as well.
Yes. Yep.
So it's a sizable buff there for accuracy. It was probably the highest party buff that we've seen, in terms of that. So
Yep.
pretty nice.
Very nice. And then that brings us to 2B next, who's kind of obviously the mainstay character of the series. Her upgrades here, they're honing in on a couple ones that I think are very decent. I don't think they're amazing. It's not what I would have picked to upgrade her, but they're not bad. So they're giving her slash res pen of 20 permanently, and they're giving AoE res of 20 when her HP is above 50%. Now, just to remind people, she is an evade-oriented unit. I had to kind of jog my memory exactly how evasive she was earlier, and she, I think, stands up still on the table of like where units fall for evasion, where she is kind of in that like Chunak, Locke, Halloween Fred, Lastwell, like it's that B tier evade. So like it maybe doesn't have the same oppressive power that it once did, but she's still an evade unit. I think she can still dodge a fair amount of things. They gave her initial AP of 15 and React Block 30, and so I think they kind of missed a little bit on her 120 or 140 upgrade here as well. They basically upgraded the slow ability here to be a 50% chance instead of a 25% chance without changing anything else. And so to me, it's one of those things. It's like, where the upgrade's coming from. It's coming a little bit from a survivability aspect, which is fair enough. 20 Slasher's pen is also half decent, but she's also a pierce oriented unit to a degree too. She's got a couple pierce attacks here that obviously that doesn't apply to, and I would have liked to have seen something to go with the evasion. And before I stop talking, they did address that a little bit here in the limit break, where they gave her an ignore sure hit on the limit break, so they are still like keeping her kind of current with some of the modern tools of evade units. But this limit break upgrade is still a good one. It gives her courage, which is awesome for the survivability, reaction block rate, more of it, decrease AP consumption, and the ignore sure hit, while also reducing the AP from 43 to 28. So there's a lot of decent upgrades here, but I think she fell so far behind. I don't feel good about these for making her perform in the modern era. I don't know if that's just me.
I don't know. There's some good, and I think there's some bad. I think they also did try to address her AP issues. That was always a big problem with her, is that she would run out of AP super quickly. They gave her the initial AP and the dream, and then the reduced AP consumption there on the limit burst. So that's quite nice. I'm actually kind of a fan of the Job 25 upgrade. Anytime that you can get a 50% on a very strong status ailment like slow, I think is one of the strongest ones that you can have. Um, I like it. It's still an AoE ability. She can technically hit all 3 units if they do line up. They did try to address the slash res penetration, which was always another one of her issues as well, with the 20% there
Right.
in the dream. I think that the biggest problems for me has always been that upgraded EX passive that we're looking at here now, that
Yeah.
absorbed 30% damage. This is so bad, like
Yeah.
and it's always been bad.
Yep.
Even back in the day. This unit, her HP is like amongst the bottom tier of the game. Like her base HP especially is one of the worst, like in out of any physical attacker in the game. So I don't know if this absorb is really doing much for her at all. I do like the area resist that they gave her, and trying to maybe inch her towards a point where she could potentially take a hit. Although I think that most of these primo damage dealers coming out now probably are still going to be able to one-shot her. I think probably what you're going to be wanting to do is, you have that 20% base. You're definitely going to want to use that samurai buff, which gives her another 15. I think that's probably her best buff that she can, because that's also going to buff her evasion as well.
Correct. Yep.
So I think you're always going to be wanting to use that. So that gets her to 35, and then you can throw on maybe another 20 in a vision card or something, and then you're talking, I think, around 55, 60%. She'll definitely be able to take a hit.
I like it. And I think you articulated something that I didn't do well myself about her effective HP and like how she lives in the battlefield. And I think that's why I was maybe slightly more down on some of the upgrades here for like this one too, that if you're considering the range and the flexibility of how to get her to move, I'm wary that she can actually get in position to land this at a time early enough in the fight that it matters. Like slow is not one of those effects that you realize like immediately in the next 5 seconds of the fight. Slow like accumulates over time as the turn rotations go, that like, so like if by the nature of that status effect, it means she has to live long enough to like accumulate some of that CT disparity, that when you consider that you got no other evasion upgrades at all, and they didn't at all lean into some of this like yo-yoing of the health pool, which I didn't hate. I actually like that concept theoretically of like you kind of boom or bust depending upon how much health you can siphon back. I would have preferred them to go with something like the healing power or the evasion angle, or just something that even on this ability, if it granted like healing power up and gave you some kind of incentive to maybe use this someday, because right now you just wouldn't. You would always be locked to these two passives, particularly for the extra 12% evasion here, because without that she falls significantly like down to like status, like average evade unit status, if you know what I mean. So I'm just like kind of confused with the profile. I think that's why I have pessimistic hopes overall.
I'm not worried about her evade potential at all. I think she's going to be able to get right up there with some of the best in the game. Though I think, in terms of evade units, you're really wanting to look and trying to get into reincarnations at that point to kind of optimize their survivability, because any additional luck and that you can get to pull in there is going right to the bottom line for their survival. I do like what they did with the LB though. Courage plus
The
ignore
LB's
sure hit.
great. The LB's
That,
great.
that's that's a really solid upgrade. I'm not sure. She's in that katana group, which it's not bad. Like there's some good stuff in there, but they're waiting, I think, for another primo unit, and they might get it. I mean, we're seeing hints now of Dario coming, so maybe she's a unit that could rise. If he turns out to be an evade unit too, maybe that's actually a decent team. Could could happen.
Uh,
Stranger things have.
I will 10 billion% agree with you. Right now, the hints we're getting for Dario is that he very well could be an evade style unit. That if he comes out and if he gets a 35% luck card like Halloween Lucio, and 2B is on that, and maybe he has some kind of aura buff that has evasion on. Like, there's a lot of things here that obviously very much could make that work. So I'm totally open minded for the longer term vision. Because she's not terribly far off. I just know she fell off the cliff so hard that it takes a little bit for me to really like get some glimmer of hope to get him back.
Yeah, it's definitely like hopium, but I would have preferred if they absolutely upgraded that absorb HP passive and tried to make that better, because there is an EX upgrade already dedicated to it, and it's as it is, it's just so bad that
Yeah,
that would, I think, been a lot more meaningful than what they did with the Job 25.
absolutely. And one unique thing here about both 9S and 2B is that they are 80 cost units, which we don't really see as often anymore. We kind of yo-yo back and forth between like 100 and 70, and when it can't be 100, then it's 90. 80 is a little more unique, and obviously how it fits into some of the like cost to 20 structure of things. And if you're kind of looking at the barometer of like this filter can't be right. Hold on a second. If you're looking at the barometer of like what cost 80 units are, there's not a lot of like promising units to really go off of here where they were selection quest oriented units. Any thoughts on that philosophically in terms of cost 80 stuff?
A little bit of a history lesson. I think these were the last 80 cost gotcha units that were ever released in the game. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure they were the last ones. Of course, we've gotten 80 cost units since then, in terms of like the selection quest stuff and obviously Lucio, but they were the last ones I think that we actually got, out of that gotcha system. Nowadays it's all 100 cost or 70 cost, and I feel like they're a little bit the odd man outs. But if we do have like some 90 cost stuff coming through, like maybe that could be an interesting combo. You go 100, 90, 80, and maybe it could be a stronger overall team than 100, 170. I'm not sure, but I do feel like that 80 costs. I don't know. I kind of scratch my head a little bit
Right.
sometimes with it.
Right. No, because 220 is definitely the default for most of the limited Guild War stuff, just more commonly speaking. So if you're at a 100 cost unit, put an 80 cost in there next to them, you're talking 180 costs, you only have 40 costs to work with. Like, you can't really field a viable team out of that. And it's really only until you raise the bar to 230 that maybe you can get a 50 cost unit. But at that point, if it's a 230 team, there's likely some other iterations where you can, I don't know, fill it out differently. But yeah, 80 is an odd man out for sure.
Yeah, I mean the current direction, with the cost structure, they're definitely trying to, like I said, push that 100, 170 type setup. So it's a little bit of a bummer for sometimes, for at least for the cost limited aspect.
Absolutely. Right. That's the most common place you would consider using a lot of these units, where they're typically power crept to the higher costs, but they've been bucking some trends that recently, so I can't say that with as much certainty as normal. But alongside that, we are getting the 2B card re-released as well, which is a mono element wind oriented card. I think there's questions around whether or not it's still relevant, whether or not you should pull. Obviously, there's cost considerations. Whether or not you use 2B, I think, is kind of irrelevant, because this card is still, in my opinion, a very, very serviceable card. I still use it with enough frequency that it's hard for me to say it's worth pulling, because I don't know what the banners are going to be for it yet. Obviously, you have to consider the long-term spend as well and what you have for your stash. If you get it relatively cheap, I give it a thumbs up personally. That luck has still proven very, very versatile for not only accuracy but evasion in many of my wind teams. But there's a lot of wind units that are like crit damage oriented too. The spirit is fair. It's one of those ones that I like but don't love. But I still like this card. I don't know about you.
I still like this card a lot. I think this is one of Win's best cards. I think I would put this in a top 4 or 5 for the Win cards overall.
Yep.
And if you're interested in 2B, especially, very strong bestowed on there for her. It's
Huge.
always has been.
Huge.
Gave her that even more slash Riz pen. A bit of agility too, which she really appreciates. So I don't know. I like this card quite a bit. I think it's worth 10K to be honest with you. I would but I mean, on the other hand, though, if you're not really a wind player, you can skip it. But if you do play wind, I would grab it for sure.
I would agree with that. Wind is in a unique spot too, that they're one of the few elements that has another different vision card that has both the AoE res and the agility on it, the Sodali vision card, which means it frees up a lot of these other cards to be candidates for that main slot. And this is a great card to be in a main slot where you get that full 35% luck, the full 8 spirit, the full unit bestowed. Like there's a lot of upsides here as a main slot vision card that particularly is an emphasis why I still like it.
Also for guild raids, that crit damage is big for that mode too. So if you like to play around in guild raid stuff, very good card for that too.
I like it. I like it. Well, good. Well, we're going to focus on another automaton at this point. A2 is being released as a brand new ice unit, and she's a pierce-oriented unit. A lot of people obviously very excited for her. She's typically a very popular unit across a variety of gotchas. I know in the last like year and a half, I've seen her explode in popularity, both in Octopath Traveler and Nikkei in the collabs that they've done. I knew it was kind of only a matter of time. I was really scratching my head from a profitability standpoint why wotv hadn't introduced her yet, given like the demand in the other Square titles and whatnot. But she is finally here. I've done a fair amount of looking at her. I know you have too. You have any initial thoughts and impressions and like overall takeaways as a unit?
Well, just kind of piggybacking on your initial point there. I know, like coming from ffbe, like I can still remember vividly when A2 first dropped, back in the 6-star era for that game, and incredible hype on this unit. And I mean, I went ham on her in
Yeah.
that game, and I'm gonna go ham again in this one. So I'm excited. I'm excited she's part of that ice element, which hasn't really been doing much of
Yes.
anything
Can I
as of
pause? I,
late.
I called her a Pierce unit. I'm sorry. She's a slash unit. I got that. It's her sub job. That's the
Yes,
Pierce. I'm sorry. Thank you.
yeah, she does have some pierce attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Sorry. Correct myself before
um,
we get too far in the convo.
no, she's got a lot of nice things going on, in terms of her kit. Very high octane damage dealer. She can deal a ton of damage. Her attack value can get like through the roof. High. Anywhere from like 1700 to up over 2000. I've seen without reincarnations in some builds. I think the biggest thing is she is bringing some imperils. One that's actually similar to Black Rose Helena, that will reduce area resistance. And that's a huge enabler. That we've seen that in the Black Mage team, the kind of damage that VV and even Raf are able to put out after that Imperil is coming through. It's gonna take some getting used to for seeing physical units all of a sudden start popping off again like they used to. So
Yep.
the Bradleys of the world, and even Astrius, who we just got, he actually has this too, but it doesn't often come out because it's not as long range or as big of an AoE as this one. So yeah, she's also a very accurate unit. That's another one of her kind of key attributes. She can be, an evade hunter. You're really able to get her well over 400% accuracy. So
I love it. Yeah, I'm very much excited for this unit. I love that she's ice. I do think she's a unit that ice desperately needed, where a lot of the other characters have just barely missed the mark. They typically require a lot of help to really perform anywhere near acceptable for what we hold 100 cost units to the standard of. That Imperil, I think, is the first thing that does pop off. I can't understate that enough, how excited I am for this. In addition to the 100% reduced counter chance, the really nice thing about this is that this is the kind of ability that will help your teammates as well. That should you not be stacking reaction block rate on your own units, that this automatically, from like a pretty liberal cross shape AoE there, can also reduce the counter chance, in addition to the extra hit rate and the absorption of the damage there. There's a lot of other utility too, though, in terms of that, Diamond, Dispel Courage. She's got some roll compression here too with the Restore HP, which is one of my absolute favorite things. I'm a sucker for. If you can eliminate an entire support because you have someone in the fight here that can regenerate a little bit of HP to keep you at a relatively decent state, two big thumbs up for that. I think the limit break is very, very intriguing too. This is not something you see often other than the Helena the Black Rose vision card. I think it exists elsewhere too, but just, again, not often that you see it. It's an attraction ability that will bring them closer together, which I love for setting up characters that have more cross-shape AoEs, not necessarily the diamond AoEs, just kind of gets them to a smaller range there. It's got two different status effects, slow and immobilize, and I am very, very high on immobilize at the moment. Only just from seeing Young Eld use it on his Trick Lancer sub recently, that there was a couple fights that I saw him get that immobilize off, and it kind of like dawned on me the massive trickle-down effects of being able to like plant an enemy RAF in place, or if you're lined up on a DPS early, you can lock that DPS in place. There's a whole lot you can do there with it. Obviously, big slash attack and parallel on it too. The list goes on and on and on. I'm a big fan of what they did with her. I think she's an excellent unit.
The untranslated effect on her buff is another relatively new mechanic. We just saw it come in with Winter Ramada, and she can protect her barrier, so she can remove the ability of the enemy to break the barrier. So that's actually really potent for her, because she not only has a physical barrier that comes in there, but she does also have a 70% magic barrier as well that she can put on. That is just for herself. That is, she gets the Dispel Haste on hits, and then also the debuff for barrier removal.
You're right.
Well.
I see it now that I see the wording of that. Good call out. I mean, still, she's got enough range. It's obviously kind of still some RNG related things, but you figure 5 squares away on, is this one 5? What? This one's 6. Yeah. So, like, it's competitive with a lot of the other range breakers. Maybe not Bradley. He can probably still, just because from a speed perspective, get in there quickly. But, yeah. I know there's questions around, is she a meta unit? And that word is a very delicate term. Meta means a lot of things to a lot of different people. In what we're seeing right now in the game, do you think she can compete as a like meta unit, if you will?
100%. There's not a doubt in my mind. This is not only from a kit perspective, but also from the fact that people are excited about this unit. People love Nier, and they're going to pull for this unit. So she is going to be out there on many people's teams just because of that. And that's what you really need to shift the meta, is people need to have the unit. Not a doubt in my mind that that's going to happen.
I'm so glad you said that. That's actually something I had to come to terms with again recently in terms of defining meta usage or not, is how the exposure of how they get pulled. And I, on Black Rose Helena's note, I kind of underestimated, I forgot, like being a permanent pull light unit, how many people would pull for her, regardless of, like, obviously she's still a top tier unit, but there's something to be said for like the widespread exposure of a unit that gets to a critical mass, that all of a sudden when enough people can run it, it does start to become like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That I agree, there's, in addition to everything here, the pull rate that most people will go after for her, considering that there's really no other units on the Nier banner that you have to really spend for. 2B and 9S, like, you can pass on. I mean, 9S is free, but you know what I mean, to build in with the shards and whatnot. That, from a spend perspective, I think it's not a reach. Maybe the Holovision card is. We'll get to that soon. Obviously, that falls into things. But yeah, when you talk about the matchup with Magic, she's got a little bit here in terms of like some of the dream ability, and she starts off at a decent spot here. But Magic Res is only like one small aspect of it. Obviously, there's far more new age ways to like mitigate magic damage that I don't necessarily think she has, other than the reduce damage the larger the size. And this is, I think, the mechanic I think of most as a new age mechanic, where getting a 35% reduction on a large diamond AoE is a very, very significant magic mitigation. So the fact that she does have that checks the box for me, that she can compete. The fact that she does have some gotcha pierce abilities here checks the box, that you want to expose a weakness, you have to defend against two different things. The fact that you have two different status effects in a 97 faith meta is, they're not 67% chance, they're 45% chance, but still, that's some nice RNG. I think she's got a lot of things here, in addition to the decreased AoE res, amongst other things that, yeah, will do well.
Plus the whole Spellblade kit with resist magic and magic barrier in there too.
The magic barrier, I'll give you. The resist magic, this one I don't think I've seen used in years. This is a tough buff, but I know what you mean. I agree with you on paper. If people really needed to make it work, they'll make this work, and that is a substantial buff to really like add into the wrinkle of things. Yes.
Actually, before we move on, one thing that we didn't mention yet is that all of these near units are not humanoid in the game, which
Yes.
is another sort of low key attribute to their survivability, because most often, or I shouldn't say most often, but majority of the time, people are using human killer in their builds, whether that is, on Odin or Bahamut or some accessory or on some other item.
Yep.
So that's actually a big benefit to their survivability. You also think about, things like follow-up attacks, which hugely rely on those on the man
Yes.
killer. That's a big, feather in their cap in terms of that.
It has. It's been so long since we had a unit. Was Sorrow the last unit that was non-human?
Yeah, Sorrow and Zoma, right?
Yeah, they were. We don't even know.
Monsters.
Monsters. Yeah, that I completely agree. Particularly from the follow-up attack, that's a really nice angle to look at it from. That, yeah, they overall take less modifier damage. So, thumbs up for bringing that up. There was one other question here that we wanted to talk through about her with the ice element. Does she put the ice element back on the map? Which they faded for a while. There was a slight resurgence with Summer Glaciella in terms of her pairing with a couple of these units. We really haven't seen Ice be predominantly strong or reliable since the missile meta of Alaya, Snow, and Eliza. Velas, we've seen kind of fall out of play. He was on our top 5 like fall off list that we did for the end of the year. Jaden the Celebrated, we said, was a miss. Griffin's a great character, but not up to the same level as the other 70 costs that we've come to really appreciate. So yes, does A2 put Ice back on the map?
I think so. I think she immediately comes in and is the best unit on the board here.
Yes.
And I think Velas will come back as well with her. I think he's going to be he gives her a lot of things that she can use. Some AP sustain, the haste, the the healing, obviously, and he's got the ice imperil in there as well. She can protect his barrier that he throws on from his LB. I think Howlet is going to be another big winner. If you think about A2 like in an anti-magic team, like you said, she has very high magic resistance innately that you can build upon. Howlet has the ability to reduce magic res penetration. It's always one of the most unique things about him. So one thing that I've been theory crafting is a team with A2, Howlet, and Fraevia, which, they can all build up pretty nice magic resistance. Looking forward to trying that one out.
I'm completely with you, and it's funny, I'd feel differently without the Fraevia upgrade as of late. I still have questions. I don't think Snow is nearly the same character he ever could be, so you kind of take him out. And when you kind of process elimination, a lot of these ice units, we've seen a couple elements where like really old units got upgrades that brought them to the forefront again. You think of characters like Luel, you think of characters like Rain. There's a couple elements where these characters kind of came back into the limelight. There's not a single ice unit that's even come remotely close to like even Gilgamesh has not seen the light of day in quite some time. So the fact that you're narrowing down that pool so substantially and none of those old units are really coming back, I'm still tempering my expectations for Mono Ice. I love A2 and Fry together. I love even theory crafting A2 and Griffith. I think there's some overlap here with Axe and Greatsword. He's got a barrier she can protect. He can at least do that pseudo hate thing for her. I'm intrigued about maybe some of the other like Greatsword matchups with Winter Ravies. They do some similar things. I'm not ready to say Ice is back on the map, though. I don't know if she's that much of a solo carry, but she is by far the best unit that Ice is immediately much, much better with her here. And I think that will change, though, given the resurgence in Wind with the Veritas unit coming out that we will talk about soon as well, that A2 proportionally benefits to his use as well, for sure.
Yeah, the other thing that she really does well, similar to what we talked about with 9S, she is also that heavy anti-pierce unit 35% base pierce resistance,
Yep.
which is absolutely nuts. So,
Nuts.
she can get to a point where she can nullify that without much of a effort. So, she has that passive as well, so she can get to 47%.
47. And
Crazy.
then you figure one of my favorite cards that's coming back to the limelight now is the Winter Ravies one. I've appreciated this one more than anything. I love this ability of the magic barrier that as I've been theory crafting more with this is also Pierce Res on it. So throw that in the sub slot. You're talking about another 20 Pierce Res. There's a lot of other ways, obviously inclusive of buffs, where
Her own vision card as well that we'll
I'm
look at
sorry,
here in a
her
moment.
own vision card also has yeah. Let's skip ahead to that. It's right here, the A2 vision card that you have this amazing infographic on that. Yeah, it's 16% Pierce Res, so making my case already there. So it's 47 and the 16 is 63 Pierce Res. It's insane.
Yeah.
Not
Plus
include
10 if you threw that other card in the sub slot.
right,
So
right.
throw the
Um,
elf cloak on her.
yeah,
You're good to go.
easy shoot. Even if you put 7 on a trust stone, you could probably wrinkle it in there somehow. Um, this is a great new vision card here. It's Great Sword, which is her class, the Sword Red Mage, and the gun units. 20% area res, 16% pierce res. It's 18% element chain res for Guild War. I think that's very noteworthy because it's Guild War. And then 42 slash attack. Obviously, really only affects 2 out of 3 classes, but I'll let you go first. I preliminary will say I love this card for one specific reason, but I'll let you talk through your thoughts as well.
Like we always say, I mean, area resist, that's a team enabler. So it's a general recommends, for this vision card. I will say though that it is a kind of disappointing that it's only touching 3 weapon groups here. I have to say that I think that these should just a minimum always be 4 groups. Like if you look at the total number of units here on the card, it's a little bit lacking, especially for a couple of the elements, fire, earth, and wind in particular. Very light on the units that are there. So I think they could have very easily brought in like, another light weapon group, like a book group or something like that doesn't have very many units and kind of filled it out a little bit.
Bow. I don't know why bow's not. If you put gun in here, put
Bow,
put bow on it. Like why not? Yeah.
definitely. I do like the card though, like the 3 agility and the base stat, the area resist. Um, so yeah, I think the one thing though is like Great Sword. It does have a couple of other area resist cards right now, including Silver Memories, which is a very strong card. Like if you were going to bring in a devout like support.
And we just got Hollow Vessel a week ago, which is the other AoE
Yep.
res 1 HP, a little bit of attack. The big thing that stuck out to me when I saw this card was Sword Red Mage. That's a pairing that the other ones do not have. That's one of my biggest struggles that I've had with Great Sword cards. At the Hollow Vessel, it's Axe Book and Staff Black Mage, and that one's fine, but Hollow Vessel is obviously like a hair under because it's an MR card. The Silver Memories is just a totally different group of book and gloves and staff devout, so all magic oriented. But the fact that now we have an AoE res card that can go with the Sword Red Mage, which we've proven that these units are so versatile and how they can be like slid in and out, that I love that this enables like that new set of doors to be opened between those two classes. Because Greatsword to me, as a job based vision card, that's one of the hardest things I've had to look at as an analysis perspective, that they have no vision cards with the spear group until the A2 card, no vision cards with the Sword Red Mage group. Those are two of the strongest groups in the game. They have nothing with what was the third one here? They have only one with the gloves, which was also kind of like a versatile rainbow team. That this to me is like a very much a future building block vision card that 8 months from now, maybe not that far, 6 months from now, like when more vision cards get unveiled, the Sword Red Mage synergy is going to really like be some glue here.
Definitely does a lot to enable that. It does a lot to enable A2 to work in, especially with like Glaciella and Ferris, like you were saying.
Yep.
And that's going to be a really good team for like self-sustain. Like we saw the sequential ability that A2 has. Ferris has one as well. That team could be pretty annoying to face off against with all that healing, I think.
Right, right. We've seen that Eld already has like a self heal. A2 technically has like a heal for self and ally. It's kind of like not that far off and obviously Greatsword in general. This is regardless of the vision card. I love her for that reason, because one of my problems with the Greatsword units is that they're so one-dimensional that, like, from a role perspective, that she actually brings something a little more unique to the Greatsword class that I hope she can bring to the Sword Red Mage class. We depend on Faris for like a lot of those teammate heals, and if A2 can do that like to a budget degree, I like that too.
That's a good point. Like if you think about like June and Esther, very much physically, focused in terms of their mitigation. And you think about Rain, he's very heavy on the magical side. I think Astrius and A2 are very flexible. Like you can kind of go anti-physical, you can go anti-magical, kind of depending on what you're building with. So I like it overall. I think there's some good pieces here.
Absolutely agree with that. And then just on the opposite side, I brought him up before, but Veritas of the Wind is a new, we'll call him a free unit. He's the kind of unit you can grind out in the like a new version of Reliquary Quest. He is a wind-oriented unit. He is Spear as a main weapon type, and very interesting at 100 cost in terms of what they've done here. He does not have a limit break at the moment or a 140, but in JP, I believe this week, they just released what was going to be coming. So it's not even updated on World of Calc yet, but kind of like Lucio, came out in increments. But this is a character that a lot of people know about, have had a general idea about. Do you think the game is ready for him? Do you have high hopes for him?
Before we talk about that, I go back to his TMR because I think this one is very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one, very interesting effect here. This seems to be like almost similar to Oberon's TMR, and that it's just going to affect the field with a couple of these attributes here. Dispel auto restore for your enemies, decrease their AP, and then nullify auto restore, meaning they're not going to be able to then buff an auto restore ability for a couple of turns. I actually like that quite a bit. That's pretty nice for like if you're trying to. I always geek out about these like AP deprivation strategies, but this is like a really nice new building block for that type of strategy that can kind of enable some new things, I think.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's an exceptional TMR. I like the fact that it's both a dispel and a nullify. The Oberon TMR doesn't hit because it's a very specific timing element. The wrong word to get the nullification off. But the fact that you have both a dispel and a nullification in addition to just a flat decrease here means that like no matter what kind of counterplay might exist, you're going to be affecting enemy AP somehow. That I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, really cool, like free TMR on like you said, a free unit here. So
Yep.
pretty strong there.
Yep. And yeah, comes in here, innate 20 defense pen. He's got some unit res that we've seen. Oh, right there. I'm sorry. Yeah. So perma 60 defense pen. Obviously, that's a above average amount for many. Get up to 70 with a Truststone passive. His kit is really what's special, though. Each one of these abilities is super high impact. I don't know if you want to recap some of it or things that stuck out to you for when you were looking at his kit overall.
Thing is, he's getting the I think it's similar to like Soul and kind of his area mitigation there. He's got that in his self buff. It goes up to a 25% mitigation. That's going to come with haste and debuff weakening of 40 on there, which is quite nice.
Amazing.
So that right off the bat, super nice buff there. He does have the re-raise dispel. That one is on a jump actually, so maybe could be a little bit hard to use sometimes. Though it does have a pretty fast cast time on there at 360.
Good with that. Yep.
He does have a physical barrier as well as area resistance. The other really nice thing is he does have, similar to what we were just talking about with A2, he's got the area resist shred of up to 50%. That's on a diamond AoE there. It's also a 2-hit chain attack, so really, really good skill for the spear group and the wind group, to be honest. And anybody that can pair up with him, that's going to be a good team enabler.
Yep. And I saw where my missing piece was. So he gets 30 defense pen on this 120 ability, which gets him to 100 with just a Truststone passive. And I remember particularly liking this where obviously it's a different kind of attack type, but having a dispel in addition to the 50% AoE imperil, both of these are exceptionally high impact abilities where not even including the fact that it's got the 100% hit chance just for kicks on the low ability here. His the rest of his job stuff I don't love Paladin. The job has been okay. It's got courage at the very least, which you have to kind of pick and choose your buffs. I don't know if this is superior to the self buff. I would tend to say no. I think this one is far more effective overall. But honorable mention that he's courage capable. The pugilist job, I'm not a fan of this one per se either. It's okay, but I think his main job, there's more than enough here to love that you throw him into the Pierce team. I think he's an excellent addition to the Pierce units overall.
Yeah, if you think about like Eld coming in, one of the couple of the key pieces of utility he's missing is that re-raise dispel. So Veritas has that, and Eld doesn't have the general dispel. So they're kind of made, to kind of work hand in hand. You think about Glaciella as well. She does have both of those. She does have both of those things, but her dispel is something she really, tends to use from a long range.
Yep.
That's kind of her low AP attack. And then she does have a decent re-raise dispel, but it's kind of a single target. So always good to have a second person in there that can kind of help out with that utility too. The AoE Imperil though is going to be huge enablers for both of them. Whether you go in mono wind with Glaciella or if you're trying to do the sort of the multi-element spear angles. So very, very good character, extremely strong for a free unit. He came out a little bit late for us. We would have expected him to be maybe about a month ago or so, kind of before like the Black Mage group really took off. But over in JP, like before Vivi came in, this was a very, very strong team, even continued pretty much up until A2 dropped. So for
Yes.
like the big win players out there, I think it is a little bit disappointing that they're kind of getting released hand in hand here because that tandem was so strong, for several weeks over in Japan. So I don't know. I still think he's going to be good either way, even if A2 is here. He's still good.
I agree. Those Spear fans just have to wait until Volk comes out for the new Fire Pierce unit, right? Like that's going to be the A2 killer, I think.
Exactly.
But no, I agree. On the AoE res, to me, that was a big thing that was missing from Young Eld in some of our damage tests, where Young Eld has all the tools you would need. Just missing that one Imperil, this absolutely opens doors that most people won't be ready for in terms of damage output right now. We've seen a lot of like unit type Imperils on a lot of the spear units where one enemy they'll be able to Imperil stuff. It doesn't tend to work as effectively because it just takes longer to kill one unit at a time, if you know what I mean. But this one, particularly because it's the double hit to build up that chain from a Pierce perspective too, boy, Young Eld's going to be good with this character.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot. I mean, Eld's main AoE attack is the one that heals him up and is that drain ability too. And because of like the crazy area resists, that the teams have, a lot of times he doesn't use it and he uses a lot of single target attacks instead, or uses his limit burst or something. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a big change for the game having not only Veritas coming in that can give him this, but also A2 that you could work, like an ice water type party.
Correct.
And give him that utility as well. So
Yep.
Pretty excited about that.
Definitely. Nice that we're getting both of that in here. We're also getting a new vision card introduced this week. It's the Chef Aldoa vision card, and this is not a holo VC. This is again kind of like a legacy vision card that we've been waiting on. On your note of four types of characters on here, there are obviously a lot more faces to consider in the analysis. It's a 16% unit res card, so it is a candidate for a main slot vision card. 24% crit evasion, 50% attack. There's a lot to theorycraft and digest here. Did anything stick out to you when you were kind of putting this together or looking at it now?
I think it's a good card. It's one that's completely skippable. I think if you think about like a couple of these groups, they already have attack percentage cards. At least a couple of them do. I know Warrior for sure does. Gun and Spear do as well. Not 100% sure about Axe, but they might. The unit resist, obviously that's another one that we like to go for. But in this case, it's just 16%. So it's not like the main focus here on this card. I think it's one that you'd be fine skipping this one and kind of it's permanent pool. You could grab it down the road.
I completely agree with that. And to me, the the axe job for the purposes of considering like class related stuff. Because you think of like axe, right? Axe to me already has three different unit or two different unit oriented cards. Obviously, Chef Aldoa touches some different ones, but there isn't necessarily like a need for that class. The same thing can be said for gun, where obviously there's the Bloody Road, which is like de facto best in slot. This is like a hard candidate to replace that. I don't see that being the case. But to be a Sword Warrior, the one thing that sticks out to me, there's two new vision cards in the future coming out here. The like we'll call them like Ashen Lucio and New Lucio that are both unit oriented as well. And the thing here is obviously it's a completely different set of overlaps in terms of like what other classes it touches. That these are Staff Black Mage, Book, and this one's Bow, and the other Lucio Vision card is Sword Red Mage and Sword Knight. But Shuffle Dough again is just like a different set of classes here that I like this one a lot for Sword Warrior because this class has been very weak in terms of vision cards, arguably even weaker for unit selection in this class. The new Lucio unit coming out is really like the game changer for them. But I do like this card at least touches some other like slash oriented classes with the axe notably. I mean, that's really the one that sticks out to me. I don't have a ton of hopes for this card. Definitely skippable for a future pull down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the best thing that this card has going for it, besides it, having unit resist on it in general, is like you said, just the pure amount of units on this card. You love to see that because that just gives you more flexibility in terms of building. And like I said, I do wish that all cards now would have 4 groups on them, and for some reason they keep putting 3 on some of them, which is kind of a head scratcher to me.
I would agree. I would, if anything, I would think maybe the weaker cards get 4 units on them, and the much stronger ones get 3, just so they can like control game balance a little easier. But like that doesn't seem to have a rhyme or reason.
Have something to sell later, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So right now, real quick, we're gonna go through some of the plus one upgrades. So yeah, plus one upgrades for a lot of these reliquary items that feel like they just came in yesterday. We'll go through them relatively quickly because we have limit break upgrades we want to get to, a new 70 cost unit, and then the Q&A. But Bloodsword here, kicking things off here, it's getting an extra 5% to the absorption. It's formerly 15%. You're also getting initial AP of 10, and obviously the attack, more so than the magic upgrade here. I like this upgrade a lot. Bloodsword I use frequently enough that I think these are good upgrades, all things considered.
Yeah, I still think this is one of the better reliquaries, items overall. I've always liked the absorb, especially on certain units. What I really like to do with this one is stack it on units that already have some absorb or draining capability.
Correct.
So that rather than a 30% drain, now with this +1 version, you're gonna have 50%.
Yep.
I think that's pretty material. And I've seen it do really well on units like Reagan or Howlett or even Ferris or Bradley, who actually he doesn't have any drain attacks, but he has those large AoEs which can amplify that drain factor as well. So
yep,
I like this one quite a bit.
I completely agree. I have nothing else to add. I think the absorb 20% stacking with those units is a huge value add. This is just nice to get the extra AP on it. But the other big one here is the Genji Glove, which feels like just yesterday we got this. The big one here is that it's getting toad resistance on it as well as one of the attributes that it's 50% chance to not get that effect. But it's a
I think the toad was already on there. I think is it the poison that gets added?
You're right. It's poison. I knew it was one of them. Poison gets added. Very good one. Obviously, a huge uptick in poison damage in the game. That is a massive buff to get that, particularly because poison's on a bunch of limit breaks, which are 67%. So this is a nice big percent to really kind of level the playing field. And just a 2% upgrade here on the physical damage, which, fine. It's nice. It's cute. Yeah.
Yeah, that's whatever.
Yeah.
The base stats upgrade is pretty meager as well. Just another 10 or 12 magic there. I still think this is one of the best items that we've gotten. I've still used it frequently, so whatever small upgrade is fine. It's just gonna make it even better.
Yep, totally agreed. We're also getting near automata weapon upgrades here for 9S. He's getting 10 defense penetration added, which is equivalent to a Truststone passive, so you're not really gaining there. If anything, this is really just like for Truststone passive economy, that you can maybe equip one other thing that you couldn't formerly. The stat upgrades here are okay. Good good amount of attack, but not irregularly above average for that. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the passive economy is kind of the best thing about that. You can bring in something like Pierce Res penetration now instead. So yeah, it's having a 45 attack modifier on a weapon is always a nice value.
Absolutely is, absolutely is, and the other one is Pod One. I'm sorry, we'll go to that in a second. I want to go to 2B's weapon first, just keeping consistently. 2B's weapon is Wind Attack 30 for up until 2 hits, which again you consider that evasion angle. She can avoid some of those early hits. This should theoretically last a bit longer, so that's a pretty hefty modifier increase here for the weapon. That the stat upgrade is kind of the same thing. 30 extra attack, certainly nice. The other accuracy and crit rate kind of whatever, but really just an offensive output increase. And I don't know if this is best in slot katana for her anymore. To be honest, it's up there, but yeah, I got to think about it.
Yeah, I think if it's not the best one, I mean, it's certainly in consideration. This is a really nice buff for this weapon. There's not very many 30 modifier elemental weapons in the game. Like there's a handful of them. Usually, the ice ones seem to and the earth ones seem to kind of come up the most often, or lightning. But yeah, I think it's fine. There is multiple jobs actually that can use this one too. Think about
Oh, I didn't
um,
consider that angle. That makes this much better. You're right. You're right. Yep.
yeah, like it's not just for 2B, like if we do have Dario coming along that maybe he is part of that wind element, maybe this is actually a decent option for him.
Yep. Good call. I like that. Okay, cool. And then Pod 153, which I'm so glad they re-ran near, because for no other reason alone, I felt so bad for all the new players that could not get access to this. This is a top tier, meta-defining wall necessity accessory that nearly everyone at the top end of the game leverages on a daily basis, still in some regards. That the upgrades here, you're getting an extra 6 accuracy on the main stats, which is kind of its niche. It's getting 1 extra agility point. That's definitely just kind of nice. I mean, that's part of the reason why I use this. But it's also getting a free 10 accuracy here. The unit res is staying at 8%, but most people do not put 10 accuracy on their Truststone passives. That's usually one of the ones that kind of falls off from a priority perspective. So the fact that you're not in danger of having this stack with Truststones you already have, I think is a really nice value add, that you're getting basically a free 10 accuracy here, plus the extra 6 here, just that little bit of percent to add on to it. I like the upgrade.
Yeah, this is a great upgrade on an already great item. Even if it had just came back at its +5 version, it would have been a highly recommended. You must get this item. So yeah, I like that. I like this quite a bit. My only miss is that we can only have one of them. I wish that we could have multiple. I would farm at least 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Then that would be a little OP, I would imagine, in some regard.
The funny thing is though, we'll talk about this probably in next week when it comes into the game, but there's another pod that's coming that's the area resist version of this, and you are able to farm as many copies as you want of that one. So
Oh, interesting. I'll have to think about that more. Why the philosophical reason not to allow this one? I like it. Okay.
yeah.
Well, on that note, that's the weapon upgrades, but we also have limit break upgrades, in particular Yerma, Skahal, and Alaya. Yerma has gotten an exceptional amount of love in terms of her upgrades over time. I would say disproportionately so compared to most characters. They've done a lot of really good things to really try to make her viable. And this limit upbreak is a freaking doozy. This is a great limit limit break upgrade. Just to recap, you're going from 43 to 28 AP. You're getting an extra range on it, where it was formerly 3 squares. Now it's 4 squares away. It was already a great limit break in that it used to be a 38% unit in peril, while also giving her 38% unit resistance, so kind of like a double whammy, and it would give herself courage. That's all staying the same. But the modifier is going to 240%. You're also getting haste mid-fight. You're also getting a decreased AP consumption of 33%, but more than anything, I love this. You're getting a -4 hate. I think this is crazy good, because she's not like the most brawly character anymore. She's got some definitive weaknesses to expose. That mid-fight, to not only get that unit resistance, the courage, the AP consumption reduction late into a fight where you might be getting low already on AP, the decreased chance of being targeted, and the haste, there's Bam, 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 bam. A lot of mid-fight team impact on a lot of mid-fight team, yeah, mid-fight team impact over this limit break.
This limit burst is absolutely
Bonk,
bonkers.
it's amazing.
Like it already was like amazing if you just look at like a unit resistant peril, an increase of single target resistance buff that she gets, and courage. Like that, it already had that. Like
Yep,
now getting haste and all this other stuff on top of it. Really nice upgrade for this unit. Which, you know, the more and more upgrades that she gets, the more and more like I'm tempted to go in there and play with her. I've
yep.
done it a couple times, just not gonna do anything in a magic meta. It's
No,
we kind of have to wait for that to go away a little bit.
no, they never fix that deficiency. Minus 25. Minus 25% magic res is not
Oh
a
yeah.
strong starting spot. Although she got 50% sleep res, so we'll give her that for what it's worth. Not much. But yeah, I can't remember who it is. I think it's Crimson in like top 100 of Arena. He's like a wind one trick, and Yerma is in every party he uses, and he does very well with her. He does well enough that it makes me rethink this character every single time I see him.
She does a ton of damage. Like
Tons,
she absolutely can.
right?
But
Um,
yeah, can she live a magic hit? Probably not. At
Probably
least from
not.
Hel at least from not from Helena or Vivi.
No, definitely. And then Skahal, who has kind of fallen by the wayside for a lot of various reasons. Some of them balance, some of them, most of them balance. Some of them meta. But his limit break upgrade here is a very good one, very good one. Where his limit burst previously was really not a top priority to be used because it was inferior from a damage perspective to the lightning apparel here of the 38%. This one is now getting a AoE imperil of 38%, and you can ratchet up the modifier by I think up to 50% extra. Because I think the way this is, it might be phrased slightly wrong on the website. I think it's 25% for each enemy in the AoE, so it's 200% at minimum because it'll definitely be one person in the AoE, up to 250%. There's no other real changes here. It's still 69 AP. It's still a triple hit. The chance to paralyze is still the same, but you're getting a different kind of imperil here that does stack with a 38% lighting imperil. So you're going to double whammy some of these units with the two of these. I think it's a good upgrade.
It's
Oh,
great.
I missed something. Absorb 30% of the damage done.
Yeah.
This is big because, yes, if you're nuking a team of like two or three, he can definitely get himself back up to above that threshold of the 70%. I think I'd have to do some math on that, but I think it's feasible.
I mean, his damage is insane. So like, there's no doubt that he'll be able to do that. Somebody over at Gumi just absolutely loves this unit for some reason because he just keeps getting these absolutely crazy upgrades. We were talking earlier about 80 cost units and like, do they have a place? If your name is Skahal, you do, and he has one again. I think after this LB upgrade, it's really good for him.
Yep. To be fair, we haven't seen him really used at
No,
all. So there is an argument to be made that like it's not disproportionately strong because it's apparently not making a dent in much, but still one of the best lightning units. It's standing the test of time, from what I can tell.
definitely a glass cannon for sure.
Yep. And then Alaya, who is very intriguing. Again, very top meta unit for a long time. Her MA2 was decent. It was okay. They didn't really do a lot with it. Small reaction block rate. The AoE res of 15 was okay. That's kind of the bar, though, for a lot of the gun units, what they gave. The 140 was like really a big miss in many regards. This limit break upgrade, though, I like. The upgrades here, it's decreasing in AP cost going from 43 to 33. You're getting a 100% hit chance now on this ability. You're also still retaining the immobilize and the ice imperil. That is still the same, but you're also getting agility decrease, which I think is a nice little wrinkle to like throw into that. But she's granting herself protect here, which I also like a lot because you don't have to waste a turn buffing to get this off. It's just a really nice survivability metric that, immobilize that enemy, decrease their agility, so maybe you can lap them in turn order. Um, I think it's good.
Yeah, it's good, not great. I would say like it's when we when we look at like Yerma and like some of these other LB
Right.
upgrades, Though, like, I mean, the LB itself, has always been good. I do like adding the 100% hit chance. If she didn't have a guaranteed hit other than sharpshoot from Ranger, so
Right.
that gives her something she can potentially use. I can see her, especially with A2 coming back in now and kind of elevating the ice element. I can see maybe a spot for Alaya, and this LB upgrade for sure helps that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just already such a good limit break by itself. I don't think it needed much, and but what they did give, I think, are things that are valuable to like. I don't know what else you would have added to make this a good limit break without breaking the door.
I think what I would have liked to see here that maybe would have elevated her maybe back into a like more of a conversation. This becomes like a select two attack, in addition to maybe the debuffs there. I think that would have made it a lot better.
Do you hate all win players? Why would you recommend that? Yes, that would be a bonkers good upgrade. That would be
Yeah.
exceptional. Yeah, double imperil, double immobilized. Forget about it. So we're going to touch briefly on something that occurred recently, which was very interesting to observe. Is that earlier in the month of January, in just like a high level top 500, not a top end of the game perspective, but top 500, Helena surpassed Sephiroth as the most oft used unit on offense, and she did on defense much earlier in the month of January. I am not surprised when I really think about it. It's a perma pool unit, Sephiroth is not. So people that missed on Seph couldn't max him, couldn't reincarnate him. Obviously, there's a better propensity to get Helena up to speed. Obviously, I think too she beats almost all of those dark matchups with Sephiroth a lot easier. So there's kind of like an inverse correlation there of her being good and him being bad. That I did think this still noteworthy because he was the de facto king for so long. I thought that was kind of eyebrow raising that she actually surpassed in top 500 overall utilization rate.
Yeah. It's a pretty interesting story, like how, the light and dark is, as a player base, it's really what people have gravitated towards the most. And you can definitely see that. There's been uh, a lot of extremely good units for both of those elements, and you think about all the various wall iterations that we face at the top end of the game that have featured some of those units. But the player base as a whole, they definitely love their light units. So kind of looking out at time there, that's definitely the case. You can see that there over time.
Yep. And then the last thing here before the Q&A, we will talk briefly about the new cost 70 unit released in JP. It is a water unit. It's the ShadowLynx archer unit. We kind of guessed this character just based on the character model. I think we were spot on in our guess with that. She's got a lot of very interesting utility from what I can tell so far as it pertains to dispelling buffs, but also like sealing buffs, if I've understood it correctly. I haven't done a lot of research on it yet, though, so I don't know what you know to share for thoughts so far.
Yeah, I think that's like the new mechanic she's introducing is that she essentially is stopping the enemy's ability to debuff you. I think I want to say so. She's sealing that capability of the enemy,
Yeah.
something along those lines. That's kind of what I've been gathering from the videos that I've been seeing. So that's very interesting, especially like on a ranged unit that can do that from very far distance. I think though that is she going to have the survivability to kind of stand up to the eh, to be honest, like we just saw with A2, she can get up to a 6 range and she's got those large AoEs. Is she going to be able to stand up to that kind of damage? Probably not. So like that's sort of the downside that we're seeing with missile units in general.
Yep.
That's nothing new. We've been seeing that with Melnia and other range units as well. The utility is there, like the cool factor is certainly there. ShadowLynx is awesome. She's always been a fan favorite. At 70 costs though, the price, maybe it's right. That 18K, that's certainly though I think actually I take that back. I think that is one thing with this unit. She's not 18K. She's
Oh
like part
no.
of an
Yeah.
she's like
She's like
she is a bit more
she's like
expensive.
40,000 or something if I recall. It's like not or 36,000 to pity. It's not cheap.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's definitely going to be a consideration. I
Yeah.
think though that the character is pretty solid, in terms of package of utility, it's not 70 cost caliber. The
No.
biggest downside that I see with this character is just that it is missile, and not only is it not developed from a job perspective in terms of like the bow units in particular, the cards just aren't there, the units aren't there. So it seems to me like she's going to be like an initial building block, and you're kind of like hoping that more, more is kind of built out there by Gumi in the coming months.
I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned something that I know for me is the biggest elephant in the room. What vision card do they release after this for her? Because Bo has gotten virtually nothing for love, at least from any kind of impact standpoint. That the vision card they release needs to slap for her to have like any chance of like any kind of feasibility for pulling, because not only is she more expensive to pull for a 70 cost unit, but it's a hollow vision card. If you're going to pull her and the vision card, you better get some damn good results out of the two of them. If it's not busted good, I can't fathom trying to take a flyer on making her work, given the precedent that missile units have set. That even though she's got stuff that looks really good here, the honeycomb, I like this, considering what we we're just talking about there with the range thing. This is actually a valuable buff from a survivability standpoint. You have this single target, 100% hit, ignore, dispel courage. I like that. I like this teammate buff for the 20 unit res and the crit damage, like the restore AP. That certainly seems like healthy. The whole buff play and counterplay is very, very impactful. That's like the bread and butter of missile units, is to bring some kind of utility. And then from the conversation I was just having before, you look at an element. What are they missing? Does this fill the need? Yes, water missile units have a need. Winter Victoria is not the missile unit that people have wanted or needed her to be, nor is Lara Croft. I can't say for a fact that ShadowLynx will be, but there is a need for water for like a really good missile unit, where most other elements have like an above average missile unit. I think water doesn't have that at the moment, so I think you do get some like nice value there in bringing her in here.
I remember that was one thing we were really searching for during the Sol
The
meta.
Sol meta, right?
We were like, and that at that point, Victor wasn't even upgraded yet. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that they are also kind of doing something new with her, and like you can just straight up buy the unit, which we haven't seen
Yes.
in a while.
Yep.
So like for paying players, maybe it's worth it, if it's got an attractive banner. So we'll just have to see what they do for us in global. I'm assuming it's going to be similar to what they did in JP, which was 6K paid, I think.
Yep.
And it did come actually with a decent amount of shards for 6K, which
I think
that's
I think it's
not
worth
too
it.
shabby.
I think 6K paid is the $100 bundle for, right? 6K paid.
For just the paid, yeah, it would be about 100.
Yeah, bro. To acquire 42,000 shards to pity a unit is like 3 times that amount. So the fact that you can guarantee a unit with a $100 as opposed to normally, where if you're at 0 viz trying to 42K pity a unit, spending up to 300, that's an improvement.
If she
Yeah,
comes with a pack H, I'll go for it.
yeah,
For the
definitely.
$47, no doubt.
Yep, 100%. But that's everything for topics that we really wanted to cover. It's not just kind of the Q&A section, which we do have some interesting stuff to talk through here. And the first thing we were talking about JP a second ago, it looks like JP is kind of like taking a new strategy on how they're implementing characters here, where we're seeing, very strong 70 cost units. We're seeing Wind Veritas as a free, really good 100 cost unit. The Water Veritas was just announced today too. I think they're also technically part of the reliquaries. I could be wrong on that point, but it looks like they're doing a lot of changes. What do you think about JP in terms of how they're approaching the game right now?
I have some hope for what they're doing. It's definitely seems like they're trying to change things up in terms of delivering different costs of units for one thing, but also getting back and giving some free units, which they have been a bit more sparse as of late. And I think getting those really high quality 100 cost units especially is very good for the overall health of the PvP in the game. Um, and Veritas of the Water is, I think, going to be through arena medals or PvP medals. So something that we can grind
It,
in the game
it's
too.
it's arena medals. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So Yeah, I completely agree. And here's the thing: I don't know what the alternative is. This is a gotcha game, right? So at its core, you expect to use resources to pull units, but I like that they, on that point, are giving out more free units. They're increasing the quality of their lower cost units. I think that's a really nice thing they've done. I don't like seeing 70 cost come out and immediately dismissing them because they're not 100 cost. Like, I don't think that's a good feeling. I don't think it's a good incentive to pull. So I like that they're balancing a lot of these units to either have a very strong niche, like maybe someone like a Winter Wrath who's very anti-magic. She can do more than that, but that's kind of the niche. Or you get 70 cost units like Halloween Lucio, who have something really cool to bring. So I like that they're going that direction. Um, I think it makes up for a little bit of the Hollow Vision card philosophy, where they're gonna slice you one way or another. Where the cut is gonna be different. So if you said, okay, you guys pay more for Hollow Vision cards, but we're giving you better units, and so the pay to wins are getting the Vision cards, the reincarnations, and that's how they, maintain some of the competitive gap. I think that's okay, because even your free to play players then are still getting good units and they're still getting quality stuff. They just can't like bring them to the same ceiling, if you will, that maybe someone else could pulling all the Hollow Vision cards. So I like the approach.
One thing I'll throw in there is that with the near collaboration, they did come back and give another UR Vision card for free, 2Ps card. We'll talk about that next week or whenever that comes. But
Yep.
that's another thing you can throw in that pile of being a bit more generous, I think, in terms of what they're giving out. I do still hope that they will circle back and readdress the Hollow Vision cards. I think that for a lot of people, if they just re-implement the stars and being able to get the the shards from the stars, I think that will fix it for many people. Not for everyone, but for most, I would say.
Yep. I would agree. I would agree. The second one here is
Yeah, kudos to the commenter on last week's episode, BP 3976. He astutely reminded us that the conditional buffs here of the spirit penetration, or whatever the buff is, if it is tied to a conditional value with the HP, it does actually stack with a trust stone passive, or if you have some other gear that does have that like the spectacles is one thing that he gave the examples of. So you could use this sword on Sylvie with the spectacles, and theoretically you can have 40 spirit penetration just from those two items. So that actually is a pretty nice value add, I think, that like I said, we didn't think of last week when we were talking about it. Does it make it like the best piece of gear at the end of the day? I don't think so, but at least kind of gives it a niche that it didn't have before, which I like.
definitely, and I was actually thinking through this more too, and this is one of the hardest things that I have to consider when we talk about these HP conditionals. I always try to think of them, but it's so hard to quantify this for me because typically you just don't know what your average HP level is going to be, and so there's a lot of randomness of how that gets applied. But I was really thinking through it further, and that's not the case with Sylvie, where she as a unit has a healer oriented AI that will opt to heal before damage. That includes herself, which means in the few opportunities, depending on your toggles, the few opportunities that she attacks, it's usually because she's full health, which means you're getting the spirit pen, or not full health, but you know what I mean, above the healing threshold, which
Right.
which means you're getting the spirit pen. If she wasn't above that threshold, she'd heal herself. So this spirit pen 20, although I look at it and I'm like, I don't really know if she's always going to be above 70 or not. The fact of the matter is, per her AI, she almost always will be when it matters. When you need pen of 20, it's because she's going to be above that threshold. So like, there's an extra layer of thinking that I had to do for this one, because otherwise, yeah, it's one of those ones that's like, I don't know, like maybe she gets hit and she's below 70 and then it's worthless. Like, it's hard to quantify.
That's a great point, I guess, especially with Sylvie or other units that have sort of draining attacks that can top themselves up.
Yep. I just need to test. I think there was some. I just don't know if it's permanent. Like if you go above and beyond. I don't know if you go below it. If you go above it, if it restores it. I think it can, but I feel like I remember someone testing something once where once you break the condition, it doesn't restore itself. But that's not
Mm.
true for some other things. So it's kind of inconsistent how that threshold applies. I think with something like Skahal Courage, you can go above and beyond it all the time, and it always applies. But yeah, we'll do some testing on that.
Yeah, or let us know in the comments if you guys know already.
Yeah. Our next question here is from Brad Strongearth, a favorite question submitter, always honestly good philosophical questions. What do you think is the next power creep for non-TMR equipment? And will be or should be, and when's the soonest you think we'll see +7 or +2 equipment? As a follow-up, do you think there's too much junk equipment? What do you think about so far on that?
In terms of power creep, I think we're just sort of steadily either increasing the value of passives or, adding additional passives. I don't think that we'll see anything too crazy there that we haven't seen already, other than, maybe adding in some stats that we haven't seen before. Like maybe they add in debuff weakening on armor, like in addition to like the Maximilian that we've seen. In terms of like that next tier of +7 or +2, that's probably when we'll start seeing, something substantial in terms of like the increases. I wouldn't anticipate seeing that until we get like another unit tier, like an EX2 or like level 160 or whatever that is. And that's probably not going to be for, another year, maybe not till year 5 plus. So I think we're safe there for another year. And the last part of that in terms of junk equipment, I think they've done overall like a decent job of keeping some niche towards like the equipment is different enough that, depending on your builds, you can, use these different tools. It's kind of starting to get there though, like at least on some equipment that I have, is definitely collecting dust that I don't ever use. So like that's, there is something there for sure.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. The +7 +2, I don't think there needs to be anything creative here. I think they just keep, one recipe and you upgrade it with a certain amount of metals. Maybe it's a new currency that you have to pay for, grind for to do so. I think that's fine, and I'm okay with that. You know why? Because if you start making the equipment, like the reliquary stuff, too strong, then I don't know how to say this. Like all characters benefit equally from it, and so if you start disproportionately making the equipment too good, then you start like compressing the character uniqueness, if you will. Like if you can give Eileen a busted piece of equipment and give it to a meta unit, like it might like compress the character differences more than I'm comfortable with. But I don't have a strong opinion on that per se. I just know that's kind of like a risk, if you will. But yeah, as a follow up, there's definitely too much junk equipment. I can think of like 30 pieces of equipment off the top of my head. Hold on, I'll edit this, but for fun, for all time's sake, yeah. You guys let me know in the comments when the last time you used the Bale gauntlets were. They don't even have a +6. They just don't even know what this is. Magic res 8. You get 22 dexterity. That's not nice, everybody. Or the Bale Burgeonet. This UR helm. This amazing UR helm that disable res of 25 and pierce res 10. Isn't that an amazing helm? Or what about the wolf mask, guys? This is just the greatest 21 accuracy, and like I guess it's a very much inferior. Why would you not just use an Alex ring? Why not just use, I mean, because it's a UR maybe. There's tons of equipment in this game that is very much inferior that probably could use a purge or an upgrade, one or the other.
One thing that kind of before we move on for this, one thing that I have actually enjoyed that they have been doing is on some equipment where they kind of give unique passives to like the latest unit, like a prime example I think of is Resol's dagger, like the void dagger or whatever that is. And she gets like the area resist and the AP consumption reduction. But then they'll just add on like some of the old jobs like from the first year of the game, like the thief or whatever. I love that like
Love it.
upgrade and nod to like to the old characters and kind of just give them a little wink or a nudge that kind of makes them a little bit better. I hope they continue to do that.
I could not agree more. Excellent, excellent point to bring up. I love that they've done that. All right, next observation here. Pardon my pessimism, but I feel like the current light and dark magic meta is going to overstay its welcome. I'll kick this one off if you don't mind. I don't think it is. Go with me here. I think light and dark is going to overstay its welcome. I don't know if Helena VV Raff is going to overstay its welcome. I think there's going to be enough things coming into the fold that I think you'll likely see some mix up, but I don't think much. That's still going to be the de facto top. It's still going to be the best, but to say like overstay its welcome, if I had to like guess on how long it's going to last, the game's gone a lot better in terms of being able to curb some of these OP units really, really quickly. Alaya took them a little while. They were kind of like new territory, like how to fix that problem. But like Soul came out and they like figured it out near immediately. And like they've gotten a lot better at releasing this OP unit, but then releasing another unit that can do something well against it. That if this is a big problem, there is literally nothing stopping them like 2 weeks from now releasing a unit that can like kill that team immediately. So I think they understand the game well enough and the maturity at this point of 4 years of seeing prolonged metas, how to fix them, that I don't think it's going to overstay. But Light and Dark definitely will. Maybe not at the top end of the game. Yeah, ranks 50 through 250. Yeah, you're going to see Helena VV Raph for like the next 8 months. But everyone above that, I think it's going to shift a little bit.
I mean, the units that we talked about earlier, in particular, A2 and Win Veritas, they're units that are going to shift that meta, especially at the top end of the game. But if you are somebody that doesn't play at the top, maybe you're not going for A2. Win Veritas is a free unit. Many players out there have Glaciella already built. That team is phenomenal. Win Veritas, Glassy, that can beat that meta Black Mage team, no problem.
Yep, yep. But I agree. There is good pessimism, but I think the game has gotten smart enough that they've done a good job, like keeping it fresh. Next question here: would you like to see the Trust Stone system expanded by, for example, being able to upgrade runes? Why or why not? If you'd like to see it, what would be a good way to implement upgrades? This is a delicate question because Trust Stones trigger a lot of people. Do you think of anything off the top of your head that comes to being able to upgrade runes?
This has got to be like this at least a year off. Like they finally have gotten Trust Stones into a place where I think the player base at large is good with them now. Let's just leave it there. Let's let people get used to it. Let's not add any further complexity back into it until it becomes like second nature for everyone. But I'm not opposed to it. It needs to come later. I think it's perfectly fine as it is. What I would think is that you don't expand the number of runes really. Maybe you just maybe you add a level 3 onto the, like they used to be level 2. Now you can go to level 3, and it increases just how good the passives are. It goes from 7% to 10%, 20 to 25%, something like that, like a 20% increase or whatever. I think that would be a decent approach.
Interesting. I slightly agree. I agree. Number one, they should pause on this upgrade. We're in a good spot. Don't mess with it. Don't rock the boat. If I had to think of a good happy medium, though, I could think of a system. I'll call it kind of like a Trust Stone reincarnation system, where right now each Trust Stone has like 4 stats on it, right? That I could see a system where like you can continue to re-roll and upgrade the runes to like maybe get some extra of the stats on it on each one of those runes. Where we're at a point now where you don't need 1,000 runes. You can have like 20 runes, which makes it a lot easier to build those runes vertically because you don't have to like build a billion of them. You just need like a couple really good ones. So I could see a system where like you get some materials, you continue to pump them into there, you just level it up and re-roll, and you hope for a good roll in the next one. And it's not like crazy bonker stats, but it's enough that like you'd probably notice the power creep. It'd be like an extra 2 to 300 HP, another 5% accuracy, whatever the stat is on the stone. I wouldn't touch the Trust Stone passes personally because I think that's already like relatively complex for many, and I feel like a lot of people have gotten used to the power creep of like some of the numbers there, if you will. I feel like there's a bigger trickle down effect of touching those than the actual Trust Stone stats themselves. But I think that's my way to go about it. Okay. And the last question here, not really sure if it's a question, but interested to hear JB's thoughts in particular on what manual potential there is for Bronwell, if any, and thought she might be somewhat interesting because of the way she's built for the physical meta, but she kind of reminds them of OG Stern. And this is the only thing I know about this, so I'll say it before I completely give the reins over to you. What they're referring to is OG Stern having the Dragoon sub job and kind of that strategy of keeping the Dragoon abilities like, let's say, level 1, where you could have him jump in the air and avoid some of the damage and meticulously plan out when you want him to come down back on the battlefield. That she has that same sub job, so there is some overlap with the capability. Obviously, being a dark unit as well kind of helps that synergy, but that's the extent of my knowledge on that. I don't know if you've thought about Bronwell in that light or any other parts of her manual PvP potential.
I don't know. I think she's okay. I think that there's a couple things in particular that would hold her back a bit for me. First being like she's not an accurate unit at all.
You're right.
And she doesn't have a 100% hit. So you really need to like in CM especially, you always need to be ready for evade. Any sort of blind PvP situation, you have to be prepared for it. So at that point, you're either getting carried by your teammates who can handle that for you, or you really have to like pump accuracy into like, you're wearing Odin, you're wearing Alex Ring, you're going all, which you can do. Like she has enough bulk that she can technically afford to do that. But then she also doesn't have any mobility either. Like she is a basic 3-1 unit. You can, if you're going for that Dragoon sub, you can pull in the movement up buff, which you probably would. So I don't know. I think like she's like a decent character, like especially because she does have that reduced cost. She definitely does have that going for her. I don't think I would really consider her like a top choice, but I would consider her like a solid, like a mid-tier unit.
Is there anything that comes to mind specifically from the comparison to OG Stern where like she's got deficiencies? I know on the 100% hit, I know he has one on the, is it the main job? The soldier job, I think, has 100% hit. But
Yeah. Yeah, this paralyzed strike or whatever has 100% hit.
oh yeah. Oh, it's on the sub job though. So you would need to not put on the Dragoon job, which would conflict with manual plays. So he technically would not have the 100%. I can kind of see why, because you have the physical barrier break, you have a slash and peril. Interesting. You have Dispel Protect. They both have that in common too.
She's certainly like much bulkier than like Stern is like a paperweight. Like he just dies to anything. He has the ability to like potentially be built into evade. Like he does have very strong luck, and he's got Shadow Runner. He does also have like Ninja that you could bring in if you need to. She's got like just the pure like bruiser like kind of bulk going on, like good HP, barrier, like the defense angle as well. I think like another thing that I don't love about her is that Great Knight job. That's really like one of the limitations of it is it's kind of stuck in that 4 range zone.
Yep. Yep.
So you really need the mobility to kind of get in there, which Dragoon does help you with. Like we were saying, not great.
Interesting. I like it. Okay, cool. Fun question to end on, because we don't normally talk about characters in that angle at all, but certainly is a strong population of the game that really does like to think about it from that perspective. But yeah, that's everything we wanted to cover today. There's obviously a lot to look forward to this week, not only from the collab itself and everything that brings. There's a whole other unit and vision card coming out next week that is equally as exciting. We're getting upgrades to these older units. Limit break upgrades obviously sound really great. 2 new vision cards, both quality, maybe not high priority, or one of them not being high priority to pull, but both of them, have implications to say the least. Good week to look forward to. It's nice that we have limited guild war to kind of take the foot off the pedal and appreciate these upgrades and get ready to use them the week after. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about before the night's over?
No, I mean this is going to be a busy week with multiple characters to potentially build. So I'm excited to get in there, like after kind of a couple, 1 or 2 lighter weeks that we've gone through here.
Yep, definitely so. But good. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching per usual, everybody. Good luck pulling for A2 in a couple days from now. And that's it. We'll talk to y'all soon.
See you next time.
See you.